Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a great day so far, and welcome to today's video, which is going to be all about this new little palette from Hourglass. This is the Diffused Rose Ambient Lighting Edit, and it popped up randomly this week with no ceremony, with no sneak peeks. What a cheeky little surprise from Hourglass. So I'm going to be demonstrating this palette on the face. I'm also going to be sharing some comparisons to products like the Elephant and the Tiger palettes. I've got the Sculpture edit from previous holiday collection. I've got various other little palettes of this nature from Hourglass, as well as some like single blushes. And we're going to unpack everything you need to know about this palette and whether you already own it, whether you already have something similar, and whether it really is going to work for you or is a necessary purchase whatsoever. It is 2023 after all. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so here we have this latest Hourglass Ambient Lighting Edit in Diffused Rose. And this is a limited edition trio of powders from Hourglass, and it contains the shades Diffused Light, which is a permanent shade of Hourglass's ambient lighting powder. We then have Rose Flush, which is a new shade of blush, and then we have Supernova Strobe Light, which is a new shade of highlight. I'll show you the swatches on my hand. Diffused Light obviously isn't going to show us much in the way of colour. There you have that beautiful blush and then that highlight. So the highlighter is not the metallic formula, it is their standard strobe lighting formula. Okay, so I slightly built up those swatches just so you can see the colours a little clearer. So we have Diffused Light, which is a light warm toned finishing powder. Then we have Rose Flush, which is that beautiful rosy toned blush. It is not their strobe blush formula. It's very smooth and silky, and it has a little luminosity to it, but really no shimmer or sparkle that's visible on the skin. Much more subtle than their strobe finish blush. And then we have this strobe lighting powder, which is a really pretty light, almost sort of frosty highlighter, quite smooth. It's not their metallic formula, it is their strobe finish highlighter. The finishing powder and the highlighter are obviously very light and kind of will work best for like a fair, light medium skin tone. But then the blush is extremely pigmented. This is a pretty light swatch, and you can absolutely build this up. When I first went in with this at the weekend, I definitely applied too much and really had to sort of buff and tone it down a little. So that's a little odd to me. I mean, you can certainly use it lightly and get a light wash, but I really wish there had been at least 2 of these palettes when they come out, because you know, the inclusion of this really sort of much more rich pigmented blush, I feel like we could have done with a light medium and a medium deep version of this palette. As usual with Hourglass, we're kind of lacking a bit of range when it comes to the colour offering. You can build this up beautifully and it would work on a huge range of skin tones, but then the other 2 powders, obviously this one wouldn't work on a deeper skin tone as anything other than like a highlighter. And this highlight eye at like a sort of light medium skin tone right now, have to use this very carefully. So it's a bit, it's slightly muddled in who is going to get the most use out of all 3 of these shades, in my opinion. But let's whack this on my face and see how it looks on my skin tone. So I do have all of my foundation shades, winter and summer, in the description box of every video. But today I'm actually wearing like a new to me shade of Nars's foundation. I'm wearing Nars Patagonia today for reference. And that was like a new shade. Nars sent across some new shades, or some more shades of their existing foundations. And that is a really nice winter shade for me, quite nice and neutral, and just works really prettily for my skin tone. So I was really happy with that one, and that is the foundation shade I have on today for reference. So I'm going to go into this highlighter first. Which one is it? This one. And I'm using my Sonia G Fan Pro. Now I used this palette at the weekend, and so I know I want to use this very lightly, because it is otherwise going to leave like a white streak on my skin, which is not what I'm going for, funnily enough. So there you can see, used very lightly, and I'm going to really buff this into the skin. but still pretty glowy and reflective. As I'm buffing it in, it just takes on a glowier and more understated finish, which I love. I really appreciate that this could be, nearly caught me, that this could be super blinding and metallic, or you can really use this very subtly and it will melt into the skin with just a little bit of buffing, even more subtle on this side. But you can see what you could achieve. So I think it's a very versatile as far as the amount of glow that you can achieve with it, but it is very light. So I do have to be quite careful with it on my skin tone, on my winter skin tone. So yeah, I think if you're fair, this is going to melt beautifully into your skin tone. If you are sort of light medium, you might just want to do a bit of a blending. That's why I'm applying this before my blush, so that the blush is going to sort of help everything seamlessly blend together. But there you have the highlighter. Super pretty, and used as I did today, a really nice, smooth, glowy, very fresh, luminous finish. It's slightly enhancing this bit of texture here, but all highlighters will do that to a degree, and it's certainly nothing wild. It's quite minimal as far as texture. It's really not sort of immediately making everything much worse. It's really not bad at all on the texture front. It does leave a little bit of a grey tone to my skin because it is a little light for me, but I did find once I applied the blush that all kind of just melted together much more nicely and seamlessly, and the blush kind of cancelled that out. So going in with the blush now and my Sonia G Detail Fusion brush, it picks up a lot of product. I'm going to start off really subtly because, like I said, when I applied this at the weekend, I wasn't expecting this blush to be as pigmented as it is. So I would advise to start off slowly and build up to get the effect that you'd like. But yeah, the highlighter and the blush are pretty versatile. I think they will work for like a fair to a medium skin tone. The blush would work on lots of deeper skin tones than mine, but whether you want to pick this up just for that blush and then not be able to use the other two powders is obviously probably a no for most people. But the blush does build beautifully, and it has such a pretty rosy tone to it, kind of perfect for spring as well. Very pretty, and I find the blush very smooth and flattering, and it's got a lovely soft focus glow to it without being sparkly or shimmery. It's a very luminous end of satin, if you know what I mean. Very, very pretty. The blush is absolutely like the highlight of the palette for me. So I don't really use these powders a lot. I don't use a lot of powder at all other than to set my concealer. But for the sake of the video, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small amount of it on my Sonia G buffer. This is the smooth buffer brush. And I'm just going to use this in the center of my face. I'm going to slightly diffuse the edges of that blush. You could just see in comparison to this side, it's just sort of softened there, and it is quite brightening on me, this powder. It's really brightening up the area where I'm applying it. I'm just kind of using it as a bit of a buff of the edges of my cheek products. So it is definitely a palette that's sort of geared towards a lighter skin tone, which is, you know, what's new when it comes to Hourglass. I feel like a lot of their products, although they are doing better than they were sort of 3 or 4 years ago, we're still leaning quite heavily towards the lighter skin tones. I just feel like I want to build that blush up a little now I've buffed it. Just freshen it back up a little. It's definitely pretty buildable, but still can be used very soft, very subtle, perfect spring summer blush, I feel. Okay, and here is the finished cheek with all of those powders applied, I mean, it's undeniably pretty, isn't it? You know, I wasn't going to pick this up initially, but then I thought, I know people are really interested in these palettes from Hourglass, I'll do a review. And I really wasn't expecting to love it as much as I do, especially as I thought it's just going to be too light. And I know I don't really use these powders, but when I did my makeup on Sunday, throughout the day, I just felt so pretty and I felt like my skin looked so healthy and glowy, and it really did look very, very pretty, and I really enjoyed it. Okay, so let's dip into some comparison swatches with all of the other Hourglass highlight and blushes that I have in my collection. So you can see, do you have something similar? Is it really that different from what you already own? And then I'll give you my final thoughts. Okay, so let's do blushes first. So first up we have Rose Flush from this new palette. Okay, so next I'm going to swatch these two blushes from the Elephant palette, although this one definitely looks closer, I think, and they both look a little more pink. Okay, so I've built up the swatches just so we can kind of see the colour a little more clearly. Here we have Iridescent Coral, which definitely is more coral and has a lot more glow to it. And then Radiant Rose, which is pretty similar. I mean, they both have rose in their name, so you would expect them to be similar, but it is a bit brighter. The only shade really in the Tiger palette that might be similar for me is going to be this one. These two are like very much like highlighting blushes, and they both are quite orangey. And then this is a very neutral sort of toned blush. So yeah, that's not even going to really show or be in the ballpark. So here's that Tiger blush. Definitely pretty close. Again, it seems a bit more luminous, but color-wise, certainly not a million miles away. This is the Sculpture palette. Nothing in here similar really at all to my eye, but I'll swatch them just for giggles, if no other reason. So here are the two Sculpture blushes, obviously much more like coral than the Rose Flush, and this one just nothing alike. What a waste of my time. I'm going to swatch this one from the Unlocked lighting edit, probably my favourite before Tiger came along. Yeah, these two are much more similar. This is just a deeper mauvey blush, but yeah, not similar. And then I have a couple of single blushes. We have Euphoric Fusion and At Night. I don't expect At Night to be similar. No, it's much more sort of neutral coppery tone, but I wonder about Euphoric Fusion. Let's try it out. So At Night, yeah, much more neutral. Euphoric Fusion, no. Both of these are quite neutral blushes, At Night and Euphoric Fusion, and this one definitely is a little more rosy. To me, I definitely think the sort of more similar shades came from those Elephant and Tiger swatches. I just feel like on the cheeks, these really are going to look very similar, I think. And now let's try and find some dupes for this highlighter. So as I said, she's very light, very icy, kind of like a white gold shade. So let's try the highlighter out of Elephant, which looks much darker. Yeah, to me, this isn't going to be similar at all. Yeah, much darker. You see how light it is now. I wasn't joking. Tiger palette really does not have similar highlighters. It has 2, 1 and 2, a more subtle and a more beaming highlighter. Maybe this one. Let's see color-wise. I mean, even this highlighter, which I thought looked really light on my finger, it's not even in the ballpark. Let's try the highlighter from Sculpture. Again, looks light on my finger, but I know it's going to be darker. Yep. Okay, now this one looks light. This is the Unlocked. This looks light. Is it going to be? Is it going to be? Let's see. Oh, okay. So it's not quite as light and it's a bit more champagne. I think you can see the sort of warmer tone of it. This one's definitely a lot cooler than anything else, but it's the closest. Okay, and now I have the Metallic Strobe Lighting palette. So there are 3 shades in here. Let's swatch all 3 of these, and you can see, I mean, these are like another beast. Okay, so these are definitely in the ballpark of the shade. They are that metallic finish. And I think the lightest shade, again, is much more yellow than the shade from this new palette, but they are kind of the closest as far as getting that really light quality to it. What's interesting comparing these two, in fact, let's wipe these off and show you them close up together on my hand so you can see the difference. So the Hourglass metallic formula, and this is that middle light shade. She is metallic. And then the highlighter from this new little trio, it's much thinner. That's what I noticed when swatching it. It's much thinner. It's not anywhere near as opaque and sort of creamy as the formula from the metallic trio. That one has like so much opacity, so much color, which is why I can kind of get away with this one, because it doesn't have anywhere near as much base and it's much smoother. Hopefully you can see the difference there. So this is the metallic palette and this is the shade from that trio, the new trio, and it's so much more translucent, it's so much less base, and it's so smooth and glowy versus this, which has much more sort of a shimmery metallic quality to it. Beautiful. Okay, so I want to show you this blush close up in comparison to the blushes from the Elephant and the Tiger palettes, which were like the closest. Interestingly, both of these blushes that are the closest that I found to this new shade have rose in the name, so that makes sense. Okay, so here we have the new shade from the Diffused Rose Ambient Lighting Edit. This is the rose shade from Tiger, that is the Iridescent Rose shade, and then we have Radiant Rose from the Elephant palette, so pretty close. The Tiger blush is much glowier. You can really see that sheen. And then the blush from Elephant is actually almost more matte. This new blush in this trio really has this beautiful subtle luminosity that it feels like a new formula to me. It's got some luminosity and glow, but nothing like the strobe or the ambient lighting blushes. It's very subtle satin finish, very pretty, but you can see, I think other than the finish, which is, you know, minor differences on the cheek, the colours I think are going to look pretty similar once they're applied. Okay, so those are all of the comparisons that I have to offer you to what is in this new palette from Hourglass. And here are my thoughts. As a product, a standalone product used on myself, I loved it. I think it's so beautiful. I really feel like these powders from Hourglass, they're just never going to be disappointing. If you haven't tried them, or you don't have many, you don't have any of the, you know, previous palettes that they released for holiday, then you won't be disappointed. If you're a fair to light medium skin tone, I think you will love it. It will look beautiful on your skin. They worked really nicely, and I appreciate the versatility of the highlighter and that less basey, less metallic, beautiful, soft, glowy quality that you can achieve with it. I love that. I really like the buildable quality of the blush and the finish as well. And we know that the finishing powders are always great. So as far as the quality of what's in here and the colors and the finish on me, I really love it. It's beautiful, no question about that. As I said before, I really wish there had been at least 2 varieties when they release these products, especially when it's a limited edition and we're all really excited, especially when it has new shades in there. We all want new shades from Hourglass. We're crying out for them and something different. So everyone would like that. People with a tan skin tone, people with a deep dark skin tone would have, I'm sure, liked to have seen something new from Hourglass and some new shades to try. So that's disappointing again from Hourglass. But the other thing that's kind of disappointing is that this blush is just, it's so similar to so many other blushes we've already seen from the brand. And if you own Elephant, if you own Tiger, if you own, I mean, even some of the other palettes that weren't as close as Elephant and Tiger, like Sculpture or Unlocked, you know, or even some of their single blushes, it's just so much of the same family, the same colors, the same tones that we've already seen 100 times from Hourglass. And it's an existing shade of their ambient lighting powder, which again, if you own a couple of these palettes, you've probably got 2 or 3 pans of this, and you can obviously buy it as a standalone single. I would have loved a bronzer in here, or another blush, another shade of blush, but that's just me. I will say, if you own a lot of the larger ones, this is definitely going to be better for travel. It's smaller, it's more travel friendly, it's more compact if space is an issue, or you want something that's going to fit in your makeup bag to, you know, travel about with, or, you know, to get ready at work or whatever the case may be, then this is going to be far more compact and easier to travel with. But I personally am crying out, I'm screaming and begging for some neutral blushes, some richer neutral shades of blush, some richer tones overall of their highlighters and of these palettes especially. It would have been amazing, because I do feel like this is going to be redundant to a lot of Hourglass fans, because you already have very similar blushes. You certainly already have this ambient lighting powder in one of the palettes that you've got, or, you know, a different shade of, and the highlighter doesn't really offer anything wildly different to what we've already got. The finish is slightly different, seems to be a different formula to me, but again, it's, you know, on the cheek, it's a glowy highlighter, which, you know, we obviously already have at this point. So I would have liked to have seen something different. I would have liked to have seen a neutral blush, something that's not rosy or pink from Hourglass, and I would have liked to have seen a couple of varieties for different skin tones, and just something a bit different as far as the colours that they're offering us. But if you don't own a lot of Hourglass, or you want something a bit more travel friendly, you have a fair to a medium skin tone, and you like the colours in here, the quality is, of course, with Hourglass, it's always there, and it looks beautiful on the skin, and I've really enjoyed it. So really only you can say whether this is going to be worth the money for you. It is £64, it's an expensive little number. Hourglass is not an affordable brand, as we know. So yeah, only really you can decide whether this is a necessary or an exciting purchase for yourself, or to add to your collection. For me, I'm definitely going to enjoy it and use it, for sure. Was it necessary to my collection? Certainly not. If I was not going or planning to review it, it would have been completely unnecessary, given that I own Elephant, Tiger, Sculpture, Unlocked and more. But I think this would be a great first option if you don't have a lot of Hourglass palettes, if you haven't ever tried one of their 6 pans. This is maybe a little less intimidating than those. So yeah, I really feel like this is for either people who just love Hourglass and want all of the Hourglass products, or people who have never tried Hourglass before and want to kind of lean into the brand, or lean into trying these powders without it being a slightly overwhelming purchase with all of those 6 shades. Maybe this is slightly less intimidating or easier going, and you really feel like you'll use this, whereas usually in the 6 pans there is like at least one that you won't use or that won't work on your skin tone. So I think this is a great first palette from Hourglass, or if you just love the brand, I don't think you'll be disappointed. But yeah, it's definitely not something that is wildly different to what Hourglass have done or offered us before. So there you have it. Those are all my thoughts on this new little palette from Hourglass. Please let me know your thoughts on it. Have you picked it up? Do you plan to? Is it a complete easy pass for you? Let's hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. But I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I would love to see you in the next one. Otherwise, take care for now. Bye 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 bye.